Hello, welcome back to Madrona's Pulse Teachings. I am Iris, and we are here continuing to chat about astrology for healing and thriving on our individual and collective journeys. And I'm going to chat with you about Uranus because it is time for us to start working with Uranus energy, feeling into and thinking about Uranus. This is because, so when I'm putting this up, we're in mid-January 2025, and Uranus is going to station direct. It stations direct on January 30th, okay? So Uranus has been retrograde in Taurus since September 1st of 2024, when it went retrograde at 27 degrees of Taurus. It came all the way back to 23 degrees of Taurus. Now it's going to station direct at the end of January, and it is going to continue moving forward, and it's going to enter Gemini, okay? So 2025, we see Uranus switch signs. It's going to enter Gemini, and that is going to be on July 7th. It will then station retrograde, and it will move back into Taurus. It's going to come back to 27 degrees of Taurus into 2026. And then in February of 2026, it will station direct. It will move forward into Gemini, and it will continue on its journey in Gemini. So it's in 2026 when it enters Gemini for the final time. But we are in the transition, in the shifting of signs for Uranus this year. It's beginning, okay? So Uranus has an orbit of 84 years, and it spends about 7 years in each sign. So Uranus entered Taurus in 2018. So since 2018, we have been working with Uranus and Taurus, moving through the Taurus part of your natal chart. And collectively, transiting Uranus is all about, ultimately, it is about awakening. It is about change. Uranus is an archetype that awakens for the evolution of humanity. That said, Uranus works with us all individually, and especially when we're having a Uranus transit and it's talking to us, or if you're in what is one of our kind of midlife transits, the Uranus opposition. This is when, so if you were born with Uranus in Scorpio, Uranus in Taurus was, or you might still be coming into your Uranus opposition. If you were born with Uranus in Sagittarius, when Uranus enters Gemini, for folks in the with Uranus and Sagittarius, at some point you're going to come into your Uranus opposition. That is one of our midlife transits that usually creates change in our life. And this is, Uranus seeks to awaken. It seeks to bring about radical authenticity in the sign and the archetypes that it's in. And so in Taurus, we see several things happening there. On one of the deepest levels of Uranus's journey through Taurus, Taurus is earth consciousness. It is sustainability. It is the body. It is also related to material wealth and income. And Uranus, remember that Uranus's goal is to awaken for evolution. As long as we're still on the evolving part. Once we're like full on in the awakened nirvana state, maybe we're just staying there. But in the collective, we are not there yet. So Uranus seeks to awaken. And Uranus is also quick. It is sudden. It is lightning. Uranus transits can be literally, this was my life. And then within a day, this was my life, right? And that can be in a smaller way, like I broke a bone and this is my new routine for the next while. Or it can literally be, this was my profession and this profession no longer exists. Or this was my living situation and overnight this living situation no longer exists. Uranus does work that quickly. And that is mostly when we're having a personal Uranus transit, when we can really feel some of that energy. Uranus, as it's moving through the sign, is going to spend these 7 years working with us collectively to awaken to new radical authenticities, okay? And of course, we are on these human journeys, and we do get to choose if we surrender to the co-creative energies and presence. If we do, Uranus gives us these moments like this, but we have to choose to keep working with the awakening energy. And that usually takes work, right? And Uranus also, when it's working, sometimes it creates the situations that we absolutely wouldn't have chosen on our own, right? Maybe it is that we lose our job or something gets phased out, and it's overnight our reality changes, and we absolutely wouldn't have chosen that. And yet, 5 years down the line, we're in this incredible life. We're in this incredible position. We're growing into this incredible position. And it is absolutely because we were forced to take a change in our path. And that is Uranian energy. And sometimes it absolutely is something that in the moment we would never have chosen for ourselves, especially this is when it's a personal transit. And the idea is that Uranus is one of our outer planets, okay? And whenever we're working with outer planets, we're working with a type of consciousness that is far beyond our everyday mindset. It is, especially with Uranus, it takes us into quantum timelines. It takes us into other timelines. It takes us into being part of the collective web through our consciousness, that we have to really cultivate an awareness, whether that's through a traditional meditative practice or other spiritual practices, to be able to even be with that energy, to be with it. Uranus also can be shocks to the nervous system. And so Uranus has been going through Taurus, and it's been working with all of us, wherever we have Taurus, since 2018. And now Uranus in 2025 and 26 is changing signs. And so this is significant because as Uranus stations direct at the end of January, it will continue moving, and in July it will enter Gemini. Okay, so of course I'll make more videos in the summer as we're getting closer to that shift. But this is really important for us to work with because we're also entering the end. We're going to have the final end in 2026, but we're entering the end of this culmination since 2018 of Uranus and Taurus. And so we are still working with this awakening energy through the body. This is also potentially awakening us to more progressive understandings of economies, to economies that are sustainable for the earth, for all people, not just the 1%, to ideas of economies, things like gift economies. There's whole different models of economies. There's indigenous practices that move into different versions of what an economy is. And that's part of that awakening energy. And the ways that we are asked and demanded to co-create with environment, with changes in climate, with what for humans is devastating through these changes. This is also this overlaps Uranus, also overlaps some of what's happening with Neptune. And so yet from the evolutionary and astrology perspective, Uranus is one of the outer planets, and the outer planets, they do not work. This is especially from the evolutionary perspective. They are not working in frameworks of this is good, this is bad, of this is evil, and this is good. They are working from what needs to evolve and what energy and what needs to happen in order for evolution to take place. And they really are beyond categories of good and bad. We, in our human lives, bring those categories. And that's also where, especially with outer planets, especially with Uranus, especially with Pluto, it's often when we're resisting the change, and that's in a personal planet, that is when there's usually the most suffering, right? And a lot of times outer planets are asking us to evolve, and they're asking us to let go of attachment. And Uranus brings shocks, and it asks us to let go of attachment. And so, especially if you have any personal placements at those final degrees of Taurus and or Scorpio and or Aquarius and Leo, this Uranus over the next few months, the next 6 months or so, is going to be talking with you directly. It's going to be bringing in that awakening, that change energy. And then in July, we have Uranus shift into Gemini. We have a shift from earth energy with Uranus to air energy. We have shifting from that earth consciousness, from being rooted from the body, from radical embodiment, to an air sign of Gemini that is all about ideas, expressions, radical awakenings and understandings. In this progressive way, we can see how first the body has to wake up. Then the mind sinks into the body and we begin to understand life in a different way. And that is something that can happen as Uranus moves into Gemini. We have the ability, we always have the ability, whether or not humans collectively move through the opening, that's another conversation, for radical and awakening thoughts, communications, expressions. We also, as Uranus moves into Gemini, we have Uranus coming into an air sign. This is also a requirement to take care of and work with, and again, this is going to be for about 7 years, the nervous system. Because when Uranus moves into an air sign, Uranus is already stimulating so much energy. And so, when Uranus is in Taurus, there can absolutely be anxiety, there can be the nervous system being stimulated, but it's asking us to become aware and ground into the body. When Uranus goes into that Gemini, it can just shoot through and we can get ungrounded very quickly. Now, we can also have incredible breakthroughs and we can have insights and downloads coming with that air energy, but it's moving really fast. And so we also need to use the practices that we have for grounding as this shifts, and that's going to help us to not get too carried away and not to spiral into anxiety, because that absolutely can happen with that surge of the nervous system. And also, we're going to see potentially new ways, whether it's new ways of using social media, new ways of communicating. Absolutely, technology and AI are part of this, right? And keep in mind, Uranus wants awakening for the sake of evolution. And that is not always how humans collectively respond. And especially when we sync this up with the fact that Pluto is in Aquarius, well, what do you know? As Uranus comes into Gemini this summer, it begins to come into its trine with Pluto. And especially this summer, in September and October, there is this really incredible opportunity for extreme healing on our personal journeys, because you know who else is at the beginning stages of Gemini? Sedna. And so what we're going to have is we're going to have Uranus conjunct Sedna at 1 degree, and they're going to be trining Pluto at 1 degree. Pluto's going to be retrograde then at 1 degree of Aquarius. This energy, just the trine between Pluto and Sedna, is extremely transformative. I made a workbook for this. I will link that down below in case you're interested, especially working with that, especially when Uranus is part of the conversation. There is just incredible opportunity for awakening, for transforming our own personal archetypal wounds. That is what Sedna helps us into the new identities that we might have come here to embody. That's where this is heading when we have that conversation between Uranus conjunct Sedna and Gemini, and then they're trining Pluto and Aquarius. There's just this opening for these radical transformations, because Sedna brings in this galactic energy that then especially, and if you have any personal placements that are talking to that, then that is extremely powerful for you, right? But there is new opportunity for understandings, for communications. Also a lovely way to work with Uranus coming into Gemini. And you can even, you can set intentions, whether you do that now or you do that as we're coming into July, is to really find our communities. Find our communities where we do not need to make ourselves smaller or mute ourselves or perform in some socialized, normalized way, where those communities are part of your awakening journey. And this is where that Uranus coming into Gemini, it wants language to be used for authenticity. It wants expression and communication to be about what's real. This is not always how media is used, okay? I feel like I'm talking about this in every video, but it's like there's such a branding around authenticity in social media, and it's so constructed and curated, and it's not even by one person, by that persona, it's by an entire team that's deciding what's authentic and not, and this is all about branding, and it's part of the business, but it's not authentic, right? And yet Uranus coming into Gemini, it wants authentic expression that breaks with status quo. Uranus and Gemini, bringing that expression. Uranus is revolutionary energy. The dates of when Uranus was last in Gemini, so it brings us into the early 1940s, 1941 through 1945, 1861 through 1865, 1774 through 1782, I believe. All of those were historical periods of war. In the 40s, we have World War II, we had the Civil War, we had the American Revolution. So, there is this revolutionary spirit it's part of the Uranus archetype, right? Now, I am not one of those astrologers who uses astrology for prediction. And I also think when we're working with an evolutionary lens, ideally, we are evolving to a place where we can use language to become radically authentic, have new communities, and not enter into war. And so especially when we're reflecting on our own lives and our own communities, when we're feeling this co-creative energy, and welcome back to Toronto, folks. I don't know if you can hear him, but Romeo is here. So in case anyone was wondering about Romeo, our friend Romeo is back, and he's now walking around meowing as we're talking about this. If you're new to my channel, Romeo is a neighborhood cat who likes to come and visit us, and so he is now going to sleep. He just wanted to talk a little bit, and so we can really be intentional with this, and we can think about the co-creative way and, not use astrology as this kind of prediction which, often when we are moving from a predictive impetus, we are seeking to control. We are seeking to control, and often when we're seeking to control, it is driven by fear and a desire for power over. And so as we're working with Pluto in Aquarius, which is seeking to realign and redefine what power is in a way that Aquarius syncs up with Uranus, okay? And Uranus is now coming into Gemini in July in ways that we can really connect through our authentic communication, our ideas, our communities, and we can do new things that radicalize the status quo, that radicalize mainstream media, and bring us into more authentic ways of being. Okay, so these are, and then wherever you have Gemini in your natal chart, this is where Uranus is coming through, and in your own personal life, those themes want to become very personal. So based on whatever house you have Gemini in, Uranus is going to start this year. It's about 7-year path when it is stirring things up, when it is changing your ideas, when it is wanting to possibly create new things that you have to express. They might be things that a younger version of you never thought you would want to express. And now something new might be birthing. Okay. And so just keeping in mind that we are in transition, we are in a mighty transition, 2025 and 2026. We have got Neptune transitions, but right now we're talking about Uranus. And so as Uranus stations direct, this comes at the end of January, and we have these until July. So these next 6 months or so, moving us through the final work of Uranus and Taurus, and really I like to work with this energy as that radical embodiment. Taurus can take us into the body in this deeply rooted way that connects us to earth consciousness that no other sign does, because it literally is those tree roots. And Uranus there can awaken us to our own rootedness. And from that embodied place, we begin to talk about sustainability. From that place, we begin to talk about values. Uranus is also in Taurus, radical value shifts so that we can lead those more sustainable lives. And then having done that, having awakened to some of that in our own lives and in the collective, from there, okay, well, how do we form local communities around that? Gemini is part of the energy of local communities. How do we spread the word and communicate in ways that are maybe even using technology, but getting us back into actual embodied communities in our local ecosystems and creating community that way? These are some of the ideas that that Uranus and Gemini can awaken for us as because it is progressive. It's done all that churning in Taurus. It's churned up the ground, right? And now we begin to have whole new ideas about what it means to be in community, what it means to be our authentic selves, what it means to be our radical authentic self. And there is so much there, and we're going to journey with it. I'll make more videos about it. We'll chat about it, but just planting some of these seeds for you to chew on. And I hope that you are doing well, and I will see you soon. Bye-bye.